All right, everyone, back 2 weeks later. Not going to be looking at a code window this week. I kind of actually broke the recent build, but there's still plenty to show you. First, so when we left off last week, I was starting with, I had finished ranged combat and I was going to go on to melee combat. And I got 4 days into that and then changed again, and I'll explain why. But let's take a look at how I started. First, no physics at all, just to see what it would look like. And the people kind of just all piled together, which doesn't, like, it's, they need to spread out more. And sorry, that was no friendly physics. There was still enemy physics, which is why they didn't overlap. But so I wanted to space them a bit more. So then I turned friendly physics on. Let's see how that looks. And better, but there's still a lot of pushing, and the reason they're pushing all over the place is because they're just going for a random target, even if that target is 4 people away, and they're just pushing everyone out of the way. So then I improved the targeting to go for a closer target, which is what brings us to this video. And this is better, but if you watch, when they do get pushed, their feet don't move, and it just looks like they're gliding on ice. So watch again. So everyone's walking. Once they engage, you'll see people just gliding, and I started to fix that, and it's looking better. So little things like this, improving the targeting, improving making your feet move when you have contact, and then even in some cases, depending on how much usage or efficiency I can get out of it, try to make it so that someone would walk around their friend instead of trying to push through them. Or maybe when someone's engaged, their weight becomes 10,000 pounds, so they can't be moved. Stuff like that. So playing with it. Anyway, about 4 days in or so, I was contacted by a composer, and this is the 4th time or so this happened, but with this person, he was so excited and ambitious and wanted to help. It just seemed right to just do a trial and see how things would turn out. Because it's rare to find someone excited and who wants to do the project the right way. So we went through with that, and in doing so, I realized so much, in order to get an actual soundtrack, so much of your story and timing and the game needs to be in place. So I decided to kind of shift over to story, since all of the story artwork is complete. And I'll leave the actual combat layer, the actual in-game layer, for a little later, so that I can get voice acting, story, sound, and music for the whole game kind of started and done, and to the point where contractors need it. And then I can come back to the game, which is just me. Anyway, so that's where that was left off. Kind of related to that, just to see, because it's neat. Here's an animation of a catapult driving, and we're about 2/3 done animations now. There's 1/3 about to start next week or so. And then heroes. Here's like a sneak peek at a potential hero in the game. Now, what's neat about heroes is that SurveyMonkey, which is a company I used to work for, they gave me a free trial of one of their products called Audience. And what that does is you can send out a questionnaire to random people who fit a certain criteria, and they will fill it out, and you get the data. So why that's good for heroes is because I want them to be in-app purchases. So I was interested in, how much would people be likely to pay? Which heroes are their favorites? Would they pay more for one or the other? Would they pay in bulk? Would they prefer discounts? Do they prefer healers or wizards? Anything and everything I could get. So we started that earlier this week, which is neat. So I have data that I can filter down by man, woman, which device they prefer playing on, how frequently they play, etc. So neat things like already is average purchases over the past 6 months. And also here's the breakdown of which they would prefer so far. I'm not done with the data, but it's coming in, and here's what we have so far, and it's pretty even with healer and warrior taking a slight edge. I can also see I gave them 8 characters to test, 8 heroes, so I had my illustrator draw up 8 of them, and their pictures are below, but I don't want to show them all. But anyway, I can see how they're performing, and it was clear like these 2 people just hated. And there's like a free text area where people can write more about a character, and everyone seemed to hate these 2. So it's interesting what people gravitate to and what they don't. But once all the data's in, we'll publish that, and then once I have actual sales data, we'll compare it to this prediction. Okay, next is cutscenes. So I started. What do we have here? Just a cutscene. Let's watch it. I had to make, so we have the text, we have transitions, we have changes in camera, and changes in scenes. This was a ton of time writing the actual engine for this already. And then making it skippable, you see how quick it got into that? Basically, the user can tap at any point to skip a section of text or a transition. So people who want to skim can just kind of tap their way through, get a glimpse. And I'll also put in the bottom right kind of like a glowing circle that if you tap that, it'll just skip the whole cutscene entirely. But my goal is to put a lot of love into these, and for the people who actually are interested in the story, hopefully they get something good out of it. In addition to setting up the engine and setting up the text and all of that, a ton of time was spent learning how SpriteKit wants you to handle scenes and general scene management and scene transitions and like preloading. So if we look at this video, see the stutter right there, how it froze, right? It's just not doing anything. The animation stopped. That's because the secondary scene was not like properly preloaded. And then the expected behavior is kind of more like this. Which is a much more graceful transition. But there's a lot going on to make that work in a way that the game's not fully, it's pretty linear, but it's not fully linear in that if you've seen a story once, you're not going to see it again. You can replay a certain level, so there have to be hooks in the code to know when should I go to a story scene, should I transition, what should I be preloading based on what's next. All of that scene management is what's going on right now. And then the other thing with scene management is like the world map, knowing it should load. Should it zoom in and show the upcoming level? Like, that's what this is. It's kind of a zoomed in version of the world map and upcoming level. Or if you're not transitioning between levels, it should show the whole map. And then the levels you have completed and those you haven't. So like the red flag would be something you haven't completed, and then this is a new level that just appeared. And a lot of that's working. So I actually have, since I have all the story art and most of the world map art, and a few of the like decision screen art, I can start piecing together the game and going, even though the game's not really playable in the war stage, I can navigate around the game and get that set up so that, mainly so that sound people can start working with me. But here's some of the concepts for how to show the next level. Do we do this? Do we do the arrows fly in? Am I gonna do stars? I don't know. I have one idea of how a map could be replayable. I'm not sure about 2. Do I do just high score? I'm not sure. Anyway, so flags we have a bunch of placeholder art for that now, and I have to really figure that out. All right, next is the last thing, music. So as I mentioned, I'm working with someone now. The contract won't actually start till May 4th, but we've both agreed to the terms. And it was quite an eye-opening process. I've never done anything like this before. We did 2 trials because I learned from past contracts that it's good to do a first trial, and then it's good to do a slightly larger, like, so the first maybe $100, the second like 300 to 500, to make sure you really work with them and it wasn't just a fluke that the first one went right. And this composer was open to it. So the first, like, we did a main menu song, which you should be able to hear it soon. And then in particular, there's a part at the end that to me hits the mood of the game. And that trial, the first one came back pretty perfect, because the game is kind of war epic, so it's a standard orchestra type thing. It's a bit of a sad story, so that's where the violins came in. And then, but the only feedback is I want it to be a little more unique than, a standard, like the expected war epic. So whether that be with some guitar or some sort of electric sound, that's how we could make this stand out a little bit as a soundtrack. So we came and we just did a bunch of variations. You can hear that instrument there. This is for a war track. And we actually did within, 3 days, like 8 back and forths. And that's what made me eventually say this is the guy to work with, because he was so receptive to feedback and wanted to find something we were both happy with. So we did 8 feedbacks of the battle track. Here's what the final, or close to final, would sound like for an in-game battle. So it goes on for two minutes or so. But anyway, excited to get that process started and finish up the story. We're about, I've probably got a third of the story in game in cutscene form, and there's just a lot of polish to do to make it actually something enjoyable to watch. But that's probably what I'll be reporting more on next week. We'll see. Maybe I'll change direction again, but I'll see you next time.